that night in Bilbao will go down as the turning point for Tottenham, whether it be in the near future or the long term. That win has done immense favours for them. Immense favours. On the other hand, United have been absolutely screwed by it. But Tottenham, without that win, finishing 17th, I don't know where they would have gone from that. But they have managed now to sign two of probably the most talented and just best players outside of the big six. Kudus, just a few days ago, and now Gibbs White out of nowhere. They've paid his £60 million release clause from Nottingham Forest, and he'll be playing for Tottenham next season. Fabrizio Romano writes, breaking, Morgan Gibbs White to Tottenham, here we go. Spurs trigger £60 million release clause after direct contact with Forest today. They're moving fast. They're moving like a serious club. They're moving like a big club. It's weird. We're not used to this. Tottenham fans, are you guys used to this? Because I'm not as a Chelsea fan. I'm not used to Tottenham acting like a big club. But yeah, medical booked and set to take place in 24 hours. Follows Kudus deal. Done. Massive moves for Spurs project. So Mr. Levy club is finally starting to act like, a big club. These are good signings. Don't get me wrong. Like, these are definitely going to improve their squad. It's going to improve their depth, which was a big issue last year. And it's in positions they needed to strengthen. They needed another attacking wing-minded player, which was Kudus. They got him. I don't think the options they had there were effective. Son's obviously probably leaving, or I don't know if it's been confirmed that he's leaving, but he'll probably be out. And even if he stayed, he wouldn't be in the first team, I don't think, anymore. And then you've got obviously Maddison, who's just an injury liability. And there's just so many problems with that club, bro. I've tried to stay away from Tottenham as much as I can because it's just I feel pity for them sometimes. And then I remember they're our rivals and, they talk shit. So I don't really care. But this is good for them. This is good for them. And yeah, I genuinely think Tottenham right now, they just finished 17th. This is not like they're picking up players from worse clubs. They are actively taking the best players off of the clubs that they're actually competing against. Maybe not so much West Ham, because I feel like Tottenham now will be having to aim for at least fighting for Europe next season and competing relatively competitively in the Champions League. But Gibbs White, Forest were in the top 3 for most of the season last year, let alone the top 5. And they just missed out on Europa League and Champions League football at the end after a slump in form. And they managed to take off Gibbs White, who's probably their best player, off of them. So that is a big move for Spurs, because now that is obviously Nottingham Forest get weaker and Spurs get stronger. So there'll be an imbalance there. And Tottenham can definitely compete with these teams like Forest, like, who else is there? Brighton, Newcastle, Villa, just the teams that sort of hover around there. And obviously United will probably be hoping to be in there as well. But Tottenham, this gives them a big advantage. Gibbs White's a player who just adds creativity. He adds playmaking, obviously. He adds an odd goal as well. He just adds so much quality to their midfield. And I think alongside Maddison, or even as a replacement for Maddison at times, Gibbs White is just a great signing. £60 million for me is not awful. It's his release clause. Nottingham Forest probably said, look, you're not getting him for any less than the 60 mil, so just pay up. And Spurs were like, we'll pay up. It's still interesting to me to see where Thomas Frank's going to take the club, what his projects will be, who else he'll bring in. But it's exciting times for Tottenham fans. They were literally in the gutter just a few months ago. Like, they were down bad. And look, I was always a guy who was like, why aren't they sacking Ange? Like, Ange, for me, I'm always a guy who, even at Chelsea, I will always pinpoint the blame on the manager after a bad run of form, even if it's warranted or not. Sometimes, obviously, it's not warranted. But sometimes, all the time, if we're just on a bad run, it's just easy to blame the manager. It just is. So I was looking at Tottenham fans being so patient with Ange. And I was like, what has this guy shown you that deserves his patience? What has he done for you? And then obviously they won the cup. And that was huge for them. And then that kind of shifted the tide. And then kind of everyone was sort of Ange in, except for Levy. So he was sacked. And then obviously Spurs fans were, upset. But I genuinely think, yes, Ange gave you the trophy, but I don't think he would have taken Spurs anywhere further than that. I think he was too stubborn. I think he was just in general too stubborn. I think he wasn't a great adapter. I don't think he dealt well with the pressure. And I think Thomas Frank's a great signing as manager. And yeah, it's, again, for Tottenham fans, it's exciting. It's going to be an interesting season ahead for them. And Morgan Gibbs White is only 25. He's not even entered his prime yet, in football terms. He had 7 goals and 8 assists last season. The year before that was 5 goals, 10 assists. The year before that, 5 goals, 8 assists. This guy has now, at a consistent level, or on a consistent basis, has proved himself to be an effective attacking-minded midfielder at a high level in the Premier League. And to be honest, I'm baffled that nobody went for him before or earlier. I'm sure there would have been contact. I'm sure there would have been interest. Maybe Gibbs White was just being loyal to Nottingham Forest. But the fact that he's left the year that they got Europe shows me that, if a club had pushed harder, they could have got Gibbs White easily just a few years ago, or maybe just last year. But yeah, this guy is going to be class. Like, he will be good. And Kudus for me is a bit more of an interesting one, where it's like, he had a bad season last year for his standards. It was underwhelming. West Ham as a whole had a bad season, and a lot of blame got shifted onto Kudus. He's got a lot to prove this year for Spurs. He's going to get a lot of flack if he doesn't kick on. And yeah, I think there's a lot more pressure on Kudus right now, because I think if he had maybe another season like at West Ham like he had now, I don't think a Spurs would have gone in for him. It would have been too big of a risk. And I think Spurs, it's still a bit of a risk, but I think Spurs have gambled with that risk. And look, Kudus is a wonderful player. He's so talented. So there could have easily been external factors affecting his play at West Ham. He might have just not been happy with the situation. The manager's getting sacked and just the instability. So I think a different environment for him at Spurs will do him a world of good. And the way that, Morgan Gibbs White, the way that they signed this guy, the way that they moved so quickly. I don't know about you lot, but I didn't hear any speculation on this or major speculation on this until I looked at my phone just like an hour ago and I saw Fabrizio Romano tweeted, "Here we go." And the fact that they just paid the release clause like that, Spurs are moving quickly. And this will not be the last signing they make. And I'm sure they might even make 2 or 3 or 4 more. Because, it's a squad that needs a lot of improvement in various areas. But it looks like they're committed to improving it. And I think, it's about time the Tottenham owners kind of realised that you can't just keep... Like I said, I always blame the manager, but I think Tottenham realised that you can't just keep blaming managers. Because in Ange's case, I do think Ange had to go. But I don't think the solution was like when they sacked Nuno, or when they sacked Mourinho, or when they sacked Poch. They sort of just went into the new managerial era with just the same squad. And they thought that the new manager, Conte as well, they thought that the new manager, because of either his experience or just, his potential as a manager because they're still young, that would take them to where they wanted to be. No. You need a combination of a good manager and then a good set of players that match that manager, his desires of how he wants to play. I think for a long time, Spurs just kind of had the same squad and it was too stagnant. There was not enough. They weren't adding enough to help Harry Kane, help Son. There was no quality. It was always them too. Who else was there in the squad that was, even close to matching their level, except for maybe Dele Alli, who dropped off quite a while ago? And I'm not talking about the Ericsson days. I'm not even talking about prime Dele Alli days. Like, I'm talking about more recently, like when Poch was sacked until now. The squad has really just kind of just been stagnating. It's just been kind of cruising, but not going anywhere. And now finally there's been a wake-up call where you've got a manager who's probably out of his depth. And he's got a squad which doesn't help his case. And then guess what? They go 17th. They get the trophy, which is big. And that is now going to allow them to take this opportunity, which they're not going to allow to miss again, to bring in the talent. Because look, whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not, Spurs are a club which have pull. They do. They're a London club. They have history domestically, in Europe as well, I guess, with a few Europa Leagues and UEFA Cups. And they're just in the big 6. They're part of that market. You as a player, if you go to Tottenham, you're going to be in a big market with the big 6. Although they're obviously the little bro of the big 6, the punching bag of the big 6. They're in the big 6, and you can't really take that away from them. And that is what is allowing them to make these signings. And fair play to them. But look, this is big move from Spurs. One thing that this does kind of, worry me, or not necessarily worry me, because obviously I'm a Chelsea fan, but what should worry a certain fan base is, what is United doing? What is United doing? Because every single big 6 club now is turning, is leaning forward. In FIFA, you're leaning back. You're just you're playing against an opponent worse than you. You're playing against that friend who you always beat. You're just kind of chilling. They score 1 goal, then they start talking shit and they start talking smack, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna be you." You start taking videos, photos, and you lean forward. You're like, okay. Now is when the fun starts, and then that's what all the big 6 clubs are doing. They've all had problems of their own sort, which they need to address. But United are the club who've had the most problems, and they they just seemingly can't get the deals they want over the line. Like, this is why I said at the beginning of the video how important that Europa League final was. Because it's more than just a Europa League final. It's more than just a Europa League. It's more than just the trophy, the material. It's more than just adding another honour to the trophy cabinet. It's about qualifying for the Champions League next season. And then that contributes to signing players like Kudus, signing players like Gibbs White, and getting them over the line ASAP. I don't think Gibbs White stands for Tottenham if they don't qualify for the Champions League. That's not ridiculous to say. Neither do I think Kudus does. I think Kudus prioritises a move like Chelsea. Or he waits for a move like maybe even United, because they would have had Champions League. So that is my take on it. And United, for me, are really fucked. They are. Because they're not selling any of the deadwood they need to sell to then get the profit to buy the players they need to buy. They're moving so slowly. They haven't even got this Mbeumo deal over the line. Like, we know it's going to happen, but that's not really the issue right now. The issue isn't whether it's going to happen, it's when. Because, you know, you can't keep delaying this. We're in the middle of July. We're in the middle of July. Pre-season starts very soon. And you've got Sancho, Garnacho, Rashford, and who else do they want to get rid of? I don't even know. Malacia, all these guys are still on the books. They're still expected to be turning up to training next few weeks. So what is going on there? What is going on there? It's utter chaos and it's an utter shambles. They got Cunha done pretty early. Fair play to them. Put in Burma, like I said, no real updates over the last few months, just kind of slow progression. Who else do they even want to sign? They want to get a new goalkeeper? They need to sell Onana or buy in there, or none of that is sorted out. Centre back? Surely you want a new centre back, or maybe not. What's going on there? Do you want to sell Maguire? Do you want to keep Maguire? Have they sold Lindelof yet? I don't even know. They probably have. Can't lie. They probably sold Lindelof. But midfield, you know, is Casemiro still on the books? Do you want to keep Casemiro? Do you want to leave him? I don't even know the contract situation with these players. I know Eriksen's left. But like I said, Rashford, Sancho, what's going on there? You know, Barcelona just had Nico Williams rejected. That would be literally a perfect time for United to literally go to Barcelona and say, look, Rashford, we want you to sign him. We'll literally, you know, we'll give you a cheeky discount at the club shop. Anything. You know, anything. It doesn't seem like they're doing anything, or they're trying to do anything, or maybe they just can't do anything. Maybe that one loss in Bilbao really did mess up the club. But really, this window is going to be decisive. It's going to be so decisive because Amorim, the only excuse that Amorim had was that he didn't have his players and this wasn't his squad. He inherited a squad which wasn't his. Well, if you don't give him his squad, which he wants, which by the way is literally revamping the whole team, what do you expect to be different next season than this season? In fact, they might even do worse, which I don't know how that's possible, but they might even do worse. And look, United can easily go out and pull good players. They got Cunha. I mean, it's just United. They're the biggest club in the country, you know, by a bit of a distance in terms of just global pull and reach. So why they're not moving faster is so confusing to me. And if you're a United fan, and if I was a United fan, I'd be very worried right now. I'd be very, very worried with the trajectory of my club this window. This window is going to decide a lot because it decides the next season. And then, you know, obviously that's a ripple effect, the next. And if you stay in this cycle of mediocrity, you sort of start to lose your value as a club to go to. If you don't start qualifying for Europe, if you don't start winning trophies, and by the way, in my opinion, the most competitive era of English football, where the clubs are most equal in quality, it's most condensed, especially from 13th to 1st, you are going to suffer. And you're not going to get out of that cycle just because you're Man United. You need to actually act like it. That's my take on it. But anyways, Spurs are moving quickly. It's about time. We're going to see what they do next. Obviously, they're not done here. United need to start getting a move on, though. But yeah, this transfer window is really heating up now, and it's starting to get quite interesting. So I'll obviously keep you lot updated with all the future deals. But yeah, like and subscribe, and in a bit.